Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes and fictional characters in the world. He's known globally by all people of all ages and backgrounds for his timeless stories about trying to do the right thing, juggling responsibilities, and dealing with guilt and grief. However, there is one time where a Spider-Man comic wasn't as timeless as the latter, and I even dare to say that in certain ways it ages worse than Peter Parker affording a year's worth of rent by selling a couple of pictures of Spider-Man. If only the cost of living were like this today. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Spider-Man Quality of Life, an infamous 4-issue comic run which stars our boy Peter going up against the Lizard once again. I wouldn't consider myself to be a Spider-Man historian or anything, but I would like to believe that I have gained quite a large amount of knowledge on Spider-Man's comic history over the years of me neglecting my education for Spider-Mania. However, I've only heard a few things here and there about Quality of Life, mostly from when Godzilla Mendoza passingly mentioned it in his video about the Lizard problem, which is a good watch by the way. He mentioned how the story is quite good, but the comic didn't receive its due diligence because of its weird CGI art style. And today I'm going to do my best to show you why this comic is worth a read, and I'm also going to do my best to defend the art style. So if that sounds interesting to you,
like the video now.
And subscribe to see more. Also yes, I'm in 3D now to fit the topic of the video. Will I keep changing art styles in every video? Probably not. This has become really taxing. The comic starts off with a pretty standard Spider-Man chase against the notorious Dr. Octopus. Spider-Man is swinging away from the raging 8-armed scientist whilst showering Doc Ock with fat jokes, which ends up causing Doc Ock to get so angry that he didn't realize he's being led into a ginormous spider web. Now so far, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing, and Spidey looks pretty good. Sure, the art does look quite dodgy in certain panels, especially where Doc Ock is knocked out cold, but Spider-Man is written quite well, and so far, he kinda reminds me a lot of the Spectacular Spider-Man version. We then cut to see Kurt Connors, Billy, and his hospitalized wife, as she gets an MRI, which then reveals to us that she has a cancerous tumor which needs surgery that has a very low chance of survival. Meanwhile, Peter's getting chewed out by J. Jonah Jameson because Jonah thinks that Peter's photos of Doc Ock are fake, which I can't even blame Jameson for, since Peter decided to turn in photos of himself taking selfies with Doc Ock as Spider-Man. At this point, he clearly doesn't care too much about his secret identity. But then Mr. Robertson gives Peter a small job to cover a protest going on at Monano Chemicals due to their use of chemicals on fertilizing food. However, we see the owner put a hit on the Lizard, as the Lizard is spotted at the Monano branch sabotaging it. However, the reason for Connor sabotaging them is because of Monano being the reason for his wife's illness, and he believes that Monano should pay for Martha's treatment. But when he's shunned once again, and his son Billy walks out on him, all the stress gets to Kurt and he snaps and attacks the owner, which causes a fight between the assassin who was hired to take out Kurt, who for some reason can turn into a snake woman for some reason, and Spider-Man swoops in to try and stop it, and that's the end of issue 1. Now you guys saw the start for this comic was actually pretty good. It's one of the better Lizard storylines out there, and the writing for all of Spider-Man's lines feel pretty on point. Okay fine, I'll address the elephant in the room, fat joke unintended. So the art is clearly very unique. Spider-Man in CGI has always seemed to be a great idea on paper, since you can pretty much create all the insane poses you see in drawings, but bring a new form of life into them, and also use different camera angles, which may have been really hard to do on paper. And this can be demonstrated perfectly with the movement of the MTV Spider-Man. However, the fact that these CGI renders are still makes it look kinda weird at times, and it doesn't help that 20 plus years ago, rendering CGI not only was more time consuming as computers were less capable, but it was very expensive since products such as Blender didn't exist. Hence why some of the comic panels look like this. The main problem I have with this comic is that everything kinda looks like a brand new car and everything's just got a glossy finish for some reason. The most annoying thing to look at in my opinion is definitely the hair, since that was a bit of a struggle for 3D artists back in the early 2000s, and you can see why. But hear me out. I think even the panels that look kinda janky look good in their own way. And this is coming from the guy who didn't like the CGI Titans from Attack on Titans last season, and CGI from any anime for that matter. But I do like the CGI from Chainsaw Man, that's my exception. I don't know where I'm going with this. The art was made by Scott Christian Sava, and his story of how he became a Spider-Man artist is actually pretty inspiring. He always wanted to be an artist for a Spider-Man comic since he was a child, and he practiced his drawing skills non-stop. However, at conventions when he tried to submit work to Marvel, he was always either turned down or told to keep at it. His day job was being an animator for shows such as Power Rangers, and eventually through that pipeline he was able to meet Len Wein and Marv Wolfman, who helped him in submitting his work. Until one day Marv then inspired him to use his 3D animation skills to make Spider-Man art. He then sent them off to the Marvel editors and they really liked his submission, and he officially became a Spider-Man artist, fulfilling his dream. Sava has said that the technology back then wasn't that great, but honestly, for 2002, I think he did a pretty good job as an independent artist, since being a comic artist is not like an office job. So he wasn't given a studio or all the resources that Pixar animators were getting, for example. So that explains why some of these renders look like episodes of Transformers Beast Wars. The weird thing is, unlike most CGI comics, or CGI films that have a comic style, this work isn't cel shaded, which is an effect made to make CGI look more hand-drawn. And I think that works. I really love how the art and quality of life fully embraces its CGI style. Sava used really interesting lighting and shaders for Spider-Man's suit, so it has a more reflective and rubbery look to this, kind of like the Raimi suits. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, they compare better to the TASM 1 suit. I also really like the Lizard's character design. This might be a hot take, but I genuinely think that this may be in the top 3 Lizard designs of all time. Back to TASM, I have really mixed feelings on their design for the Lizard, who looks like a fusion between the Abomination, Mike Wazowski, and Lord Voldemort. I really love Ditko's design, but kind of in an ironic sense, but it low-key might be my favorite. And then there's this version. The scales look beautiful, he looks like an actual lizard and not a Hulk. He also moves like a reptile too. 9 out of 10 design in my opinion. Also, using a rigged CGI character in a 3D environment is extremely helpful. No need to complain about bad anatomy or foreshortening, because now you can create really complex and uncomfortable angles, which would be a major pain in the ass to draw by hand. Imagine if Rob Liefeld tried to draw angles like these for a Spider-Man comic. All respect to Rob, as he's a massive inspiration to people like me, but he'd never live it down. But with 3D, it's so simple and easy. All you do is click a button to make a 3D pose, and bam, look at that! I'm lying to you, learning 3D modeling is easy until you want to texture and rig your models. That's when stuff gets confusing. I mean, look at the model I made of myself and how cut it is. The smooth shader fudged up around my beanie, and now it's got these weird spots. Also my hands do this weird thing and don't cooperate sometimes with the rig. And don't get me started on weight painting or texture painting. I actually messed up many times trying to transition to 3D after years of trial and error. And finally, I'm doing it. The first 3D animation I ever made was that one I did for the Sonic fans video, and that looked terrible. But hey, I hope this looks good. To wrap up this video, I just want you guys to go out there and read Spider-Man Quality of Life. I don't know if I'd call it criminally underrated, but I do know that it got its publicity for a lot of the wrong reasons. Since all I see about this comic is Reddit fools cooking it, I'd love to see someone actually just take a chance, read it and enjoy it. Yes, the art is primitive, but I think that for the time, it's not only impressive and unique, but it's really special. The storyline is actually good and it's exciting, so go read this comic, and let me know if you think Marvel should make more comics with CGI art, because if it was able to win over me, an insecure 2D animator who initially didn't like 3D, then maybe this style can win over a lot more people with the resources that are out there today. Thanks for watching.